Hey everybody, so I'm back. Joe's got a ton of questions, so it's going to be another response to Joe. Uh, so let's get started. I don't know how much my Zoom account's free, so limited time. Anyway, okay, so question two, and I've got this on the share screen, so hopefully you can see it. Joe writes a ton of stuff. So the important part of my contention is that something outside of time that can also not change anything. This is a logical consequence of what time is. Your assertion seems to be that God is illogical and is not bound by logic, and that is the box that I'm trying to put him in. If that's true, you believe that in an illogical God. Okay, that's an illogical God according to you, according to your materialistic standards, according to the box that you are putting God in. If God is God and he is the creator of all things and he is omnipotent and omnipotent, so in other words, he knows all things, he is all powerful, he is outside of time, he is not confined to your rules nor your logic. That's the point. And you keep wanting to make him conform to what you want him to be. That just makes him your God. That doesn't make him God. Period. Moving on. No truth claims can be ever be made about an illogical. Again, I, there's there's no way to deal with that. Okay, until you allow God to be who He says He is. Okay, He says this is me. Now you can accept that or you can deny that. That's up to you. Okay, and then you take the consequences of that action. But God says who he says he is. You don't say who he is, and you don't say whether he's logical or illogical. Okay? Because if you do, then he's just you, not God. Okay. Uh, God is not affected by time. I don't agree with that conditions. Okay, well, you don't have to. But again, then you have to deal with the consequences of not dealing with that, and the consequences are pretty severe. All right. Putting this in more concrete terms, if you can change your shirt, well, that's just I've dealt with that, deal with it all I can deal with it. Okay. So first question, what is evidence Moses ever lived? Okay, was evidence Moses ever lived? So you first say this is history and we cannot actually prove anything in the past. I agree that the 66 books of the Bible are important historical documents. So is okay. So there's a difference between inspired scripture and mythology that people told each other as tales to entertain themselves. The Bible was not written to entertain people, so it's not the same. The Epic of Gilgamesh was to entertain folks around. The Bible's not for that, so you can't compare two things. You can't compare those two things. Bible's not for your personal entertainment. Bible is for your edification, and it's the historical narrative of how God redeems mankind to himself. Two totally different things. Okay. I agree that we cannot prove anything that happened in the past. I didn't ask for proof. You seem to keep asking for proof. Though I asked for evidence. The evidence is the existence that you actually have the document. You have the document. Okay. And we have copies of the document going way back, way back. Which, by the way, you don't have copies of the same document in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Okay, so you're comparing apples to oranges. All right. Neither I'm looking for absolute proof. Great, that's awesome. You say that the Israelites, and I'm going through this quick. Okay, I'm just kind of trying to hit the points. You say the Israelites are very meticulous in their writings. They went from an oral tradition to a written tradition fairly early in existence. These are claims that need evidence. Okay, the evidence is the document that you are holding in your hand called the Bible. That is the evidence. I mean, I don't know what else you want. I mean, so you want something, that is dated, like these guys didn't sit down and say, June 27th, 5000 BC. One, they didn't know it was 5000 BC. They just knew it's the moment that I'm writing this. So they weren't dating things like we date things, They just wrote down the story as it was told to them. Like I said, they went from, and this is not new. Okay, most cultures went from an oral tradition to a written tradition. Cultures that don't go from an oral tradition and just stay in an oral tradition, none of their stories ever line up as the same. Of course, because people are going to change the narrative. The Hebrews felt that this was so important that they needed to write it down. And plus, also, God tells them to write it down. He says, write this down. Several places in the scripture, write this down. Because he wanted to make sure that they got it and they didn't lose it. And we see instances of that in the Bible. But you want proof. The proof is the document. The Bible. It's the document. The Pentateuch. The Torah. These are documents written by the Hebrew people. What else do you want? I mean, it's the most researched document in the history of mankind. There is no other document that hasn't been researched as much. Now, let me jump to your conclusions. How do you determine that they went from an oral to a written tradition one fairly early? Because we have it. Because we have it, and we have the documentation of the earliness of the stories. So yeah, I mean, 1500 years ago, the Pentateuch was written 1500 years ago, and yeah, you have this over hundreds of years. Yeah, actually, it was copied over hundreds of years, but it wasn't written over 100 years. I absolutely refuse to believe that. These are people who obviously have and yeah, and I have presuppositions, and they have presuppositions, and we all have presuppositions. I agree, but I disagree that was probably written around 540 BCE. No, I think the earliest copies we have is that time. But I don't think it was. I don't think a group. So if you're saying that a group of people all of a sudden sit down and say, "Oh, by the way, we're going to sit down and write the Bible out here in 540 BCE, and we're going to make all this stuff up," and no, 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 they had these well before, and the Bible documents that. There are stories from the kingdoms of when Israel split up that they found the Pentateuch in the temple because they had ignored it. It had all been written out, and then they decided to put it away, and all of a sudden, oh, now, oh, look, we found it, and they read it to themselves, and they were anyway. So no, the scholarship who just sits there and says, they want to, make it as some regular literature. Okay, well, that they can say that, but that doesn't make it true, and you can deny what I'm saying, and that's okay. Again, you'll have to deal with the consequences of that decision. You say that there's evidence of other written documents that Moses exists in Egypt. Yeah, so the evidence of that is they didn't write specifically what happened. So there's evidence that Moses has existed, but they didn't want to talk about losing all their slaves, and you could understand why that would be quite embarrassing. Pharaoh's not going to talk about his defeats. If you can find me any emperor, king who wrote about when he lost an epic battle or when he, is humiliated in defeat, they don't write that. It's the other side that wrote that. And so, of course, we have to look at both sides. And you just don't automatically assume because both sides didn't write about it that it didn't happen. Nope. Pharaoh's not going to write about all losing 3 million slaves and allowing them to walk out to the desert. And that would be very humiliating. So, no, he's not going to do that. But is there documents that there was a Moses? Yeah, there's documents that there's a Moses. No, an Exodus. You say there's evidence. Yeah. I mean, if you want me to do all the research, I can. But you, anyway, you seem to buy a lot of stuff just because other people say it. So, and I'm not here to try to convince you one way or the other, because if you don't believe, you don't believe. And you really seem to be caught up on the whole evidentiary thing part about it. If someone can't absolutely prove to you 1,000%, and here again, okay, I mean, that's up to you. There's a consequence of your action. And if you want evidence that Moses existed, the Bible. There's your evidence. What differences the claims of Genesis from the claims of the Iliad? Because those were stories made to entertain people, and the Bible's not made to entertain you. It's to redeem you to God. That's the big difference between the two. Okay, moving on. Question 3. This is the one about God's ability to gain more glory. You seem to be saying that God is infinitely glorious. Correct. But he desires more glory, or at least attains more glory through his actions. Again, you believe in an illogical God. How? How's that illogical? I mean, because you said it is. Okay, however, adding to it limitless qualities is not actually changing the limitless qualities. Infinity is not a number, it's a concept. No, it's unlimited. Moving on. Adding 10, okay, that not that okay. Again, you're trying to, so let me just read this whole thing. Adding infinity to infinity is still infinity. You're not getting larger. This is why it is true that an infinity glorious God cannot gain glory. Adding to his infinity is simply not a thing. Again, you are putting God in a box, and God doesn't exist in that box. You're saying God works within human understanding and framework. He doesn't. He doesn't. And he says that clearly. For my ways are not your ways, and for my thoughts are not your thoughts. So for you to have thoughts that this is how God functions, yeah, this is not how I function, and you can't understand it. So anyway, that's human logic. Human logic doesn't apply to God. It just doesn't. I mean, I don't know what you guys get about this. I mean, here again, let God be God. You're just trying to make him into what you want him to be, which is to drag him down to your level and say, okay, you're just like me. Which is basically what Satan told Adam and Eve, for in the day that you eat it, you will be like God. This is all man wants to do. So we want to be like God, but we can't. Moving on, questions 6 through 10. These questions all hinge on the equivocal of light and darkness. Genesis 1 is very specific. When light and darkness means God called the light, and the darkness called the. Okay, question 5. God makes everything in order. Yeah. what? I mean, read the text. Read the text. Okay. What specifically demonstrates order? The text. Okay. In the beginning, time. God made, right, heavens, space, and earth, matter. Okay. Well, you gotta have time to put the space in, and then you need space to put the matter in. That seems fairly orderly to me. Okay. And then everything else is made because it needs the other, right? So you can't make, um, so you have to have a place for the plants to be on. You just don't put plants floating out in the space. They have to have an earth for which to plant, and the plants need an atmosphere and oxygen, and there needs to be water. I mean, and then for you to have animals, the animals have to have something to eat. Hence why you made the plants first, and then the animals come after that. You, I mean, just read the text. It's like orderly. I mean, I don't get that. Okay. Uh, this was not really my question, more of a statement as into what it means to exist. Okay. Let me scroll down here just a little bit. God plainly exists and demonstrates this through creation. This would seem to be the main point of our contention. This is what every creation myth attempts to explain. Why does the world and everything in it exist? If God of the Bible creates everything, then why did he get the facts so wrong when he described creation? No, you got the facts wrong. You're just saying he's wrong, but you're not. But he's not. He's right. Again, you're not God. He is. He's the one who determines things, and because he doesn't fit inside your box, doesn't mean he's wrong. Doesn't. If the God of the Bible created anything, why did he get the facts so wrong when he described his creation? I could claim that I created the world's first quantum computer, but the velocity of my claim would be undercut if I can't actually describe anything of how it functions. Again, you're comparing God to you. You're not God. He's not you. Okay, the Genesis account has Earth created before the sun and the stars, which we know is wrong. How? Were you there? I mean, really, were you there? Were you standing there when it happened? I mean, that's sort of what God says to Job, okay, when Job asked him. So let me get that out to you real quick. And so I'll basically give you the answer that God gave Job. And you can look that up, and that's Job chapter 41. I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, go back. 40. Sorry, Job 40. And the Lord said to Job, nope, let's go back. Oh, I'm so off. 38. So sorry. Job 38. Why am I so off today? And the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is that darkens the counsel by the words without knowledge? He says, how do you give all this information? You don't know anything. Dress for action like a man, and I will question you and make it known to me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. What determines the measurement? Surely you know. Or who stretches the line upon it? Or that was basins or bases were sunk, or who laid the cornerstone? And when the morning star sang, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So basically saying, where were you? Were you here? Were you standing there? You weren't. In all honesty, Joe, you weren't there. So for you to sit there and say that you don't. You weren't there. Okay? You weren't. Now, just because some scientist says that this is how it happened, he wasn't there either. So he doesn't know. So I just reject that. Totally. Just absolutely totally. Anyway, moving on. Creation. Oh, and you say in Job 38, God claims to have a warehouse of snow and hail reserved for times of trouble to disperse the light and the wind. That might have been sense to Bronze Age people, but we actually understand. No, you you don't get what he's saying. Okay, you're missing the point. When God says those things. He says, I just create them by speaking them. He doesn't have an actual storehouse. I mean, okay, it's not literal. Okay, it's figurative. God's basically saying, you don't know anything. You weren't there. You're not here now. You don't know what my abilities are. You're framing me in a framework that just doesn't work. And you're doing the same thing. I mean, that's just, see, because you're assuming that a man wrote this, right? Because you said that that might have made sense to Bronze Age people, but we actually understand atmospheric air pressure class. Okay, yeah, but he, oh my gosh. This is one reason why science is so much more beneficial than religion. Really? You believe something came from nothing. That's my dog snoring. It's funny as heck. I mean, seriously. But you kind of move on from there. So let's continue to scroll down a little bit. Okay. You have a materialistic worldview. That's what I said. And yeah, he does. And he admits it. That's good. I do. It's based on evidence. No, it's not. It's based on experience. Experience is not evidence. Not always. Okay? Because your experience can lie to you. Because you will start framing things from the way you want them to see and be. I mean, we have people who are watching themselves today on video and denying that it's them. Oh, no, that's not me. They're actually looking at things and seeing things and they go, oh, no, that's not real. I mean, so come on. I do it based on evidence. Evidence according to you. We can understand what the material world exists through direct observation and experimentation. But okay, so we do observation for how much of a time? How long is your observation? So if we take all of recorded human history, right? Everything that was written down in history, how much we have? 4,000 years of written human history. That's it. Now, if you believe that the earth is millions of years old, what's 4,000 years? It's nothing. So you're basing all your observation on what? 1,000th of a percent of experience? Really? I mean, that seems like nothing. But let's just go with you, right? If you live to be 90, right? How much experience do you really have? Compare of all of human history. Nothing. Nothing. So here's an example. Let me just throw this out to you. So recently up in northern, I believe was either northern Germany or like in southern Norway. I have to look up the details. They found a road, a Roman road. I think it was Scandinavia. I want to say it's Norway, but a Roman road that had been recently uncovered from a melting glacier. Of course, that's global warming. But it had been uncovered, because the glacier melted. And now they could see that there was a road built by the Romans 2,000 years ago. How'd they build it 2,000 years ago? Oh, it hadn't been warm enough for them to build it. And there wasn't a glacier there. So guess what? That tells us from using our observation and experience that the world was actually warmer at one time and warm enough that the Romans could build a road in Scandinavia that later on got covered up by a glacier. So much for global warming. Anyway, but I digress. The point being is that our observation skills and our experience are limited, extremely limited. Hey, guess whose is not? God's. He's not limited. You are. Okay. Now, I know you're not going to accept that. Okay. And again, I'm going to say like a broken record that you take the consequences for your actions on that. You have a supernatural worldview. Yeah, yes, I do. You believe in something beyond the material that we cannot detect in any way, and the supernatural entity created our material entity to speak it into existence. You have no actual data to back up your assertion, except that I'm living on it, that I'm here. I mean, you sit there, I have no data. Okay, how to get here? What's my origin? Okay. Why am I here? What's the meaning? So you can't answer either one of those, right? How to get here? Well, I don't know. Because I wasn't here. I wasn't here to observe it, so I can't say. And I can't experiment on it because it's ever changing, and so those dynamics constantly change. So I can't observe and I can't experiment because the dynamic changes. So your science just got thrown out the window. It's gone. I'm not saying I don't like science. Science is awesome, man. Dude, I am digging on some physics. Love it. Love it. Like space exploration, love it. But science is limited. Absolutely limited. God is not limited. He's not. He's not. So you say I actually have no data to back up this assertion? Yeah, I'm standing on it. I'm breathing the air. I'm existing. And you can't explain those. And you can't explain why I'm here. And you can't explain how I got the morality that I have. None of that can be explained through a scientific worldview. It can't be. You're just space dust. You're just fizzing chemicals. You can't explain any of it. You just accept it. And so are you. You're just accepting your side of the equation. We all have our presuppositions. Yep, we do. Now, I agree that the axiom are necessary, but I believe that they should be falsifiable. These are rules of logic. The rules of logic are falsifiable. The axiom of mathematics is also falsifiable. Your supernatural suppositions are not. Well, actually, if you go look at the math, right? So, what are the chances mathematically? And I'll leave this up to you for you to look that up. What are the chances mathematically that creation was made by random chance? What are the chances? The math's out there. Go do it. I can tell you, doesn't look good for your side. Nothing doesn't create something. I don't think many people would claim that it did. At least if nothing means absolute nothing. That is correct. Absolute nothing. It's absolute nothing. No fields, no natural laws, no energy. I would personally think that something has always existed. How do you know that? I mean, that sounds like a statement of faith. That sounds like a statement of faith. And when you say, I personally think that something has always existed, okay, that something is God. That's all you're substituting. So you think something existed. Okay, what was that something? That something is God. Okay. I just don't think that what has always existed needed to have a demonstrated baggage added to it, like intelligence, omnipotence, glory, or love. Why not? Why? Well, probably the reason you would say why not, because then that requires you to live within a certain framework that maybe you just don't like. Well, that's a you problem. Um, there are many hypotheses, and what are hypotheses? Educated guesses. It's a guess about how our universe got here, and none of them were here, and that's why they're guesses. And so you're putting that hypothesis. Another word for hypothesis is blind faith. All right, sorry about that. Pick this back up. Okay, so going back. So based on evidence, we have eliminated some of the. Okay, I don't think what has always existed need to have non-demonstrable baggage added to it, like intelligence. There are many hypotheses about how our universe is based on the evidence. We have eliminated some of those, but many still, at least, are possible. My best answer is we don't currently know which one of these is correct, if any. On the other hand, you have presubs that one specific answer is correct. I just don't see any justification for that because you don't want to. Romans 1, dude. Romans 1, 18 through 22. I mean, it's what the scripture says. Pretty. Matter has not demonstrated to me that is me talking. Matter has not just demonstrated to me that it has intelligence. We have plenty of examples of things without intelligence creating things. But if you're talking about amoebas and protoplasm, they're not creating anything. I mean, I guess they're just reproducing. They're just doing what they were created to do, but they're not creating. So we talk about atmosphere above and how those conditions create lightning. That's not creation, dude. That's not. Oh my gosh, not the same. Not the same. Okay, creating means making something that functions. Okay, not just something that happens. See, lightning is just something that happens. Okay, it's here and it's gone. Right? It rained. It's here and it's gone. Right? You create something, it functions, not just happens. Okay. Uh, so every star creates radiation, gravity, gas. Okay. It's difference between functions and happens. You know, we're created beings, we function constantly. Okay. There's an intelligence to that. I want to go back up. I don't think there's anything left on this one, but I gotta mix everything in order. So it's like your example when I said, I know that may be upsetting for some folks, but light isn't generated by the sun, but through His word. See, again, that's when you say this is a classic example of equivalation. Yes, light is generated by the sun. This is why Genesis says God made two great lights. Oh, God created two great lights to define day and night. He didn't need to. He didn't need to create. He is light. Okay. Other such analogies as later. Well, this is a scientific debate. We're not trying to have that because that's not what we're talking about. You may be talking about science. I am not. And he just says, I talk about science because it is the single most effective method that we have found to investigate and understand our universe that predictions make about the future. And how many times have they been wrong? Constantly. I mean, this is why you have to constantly do science. I mean, that's the interesting thing about science is because you have to constantly do it because it doesn't ever stay the same. It's constant, right? So it never change. That's what makes it interesting, but it's not determinative. So at no point doing science do you say this is determinative because then there's always something that comes back and goes, maybe not. So like a determinative is what goes up must come down until you get outside the atmosphere, right? Out until you get outside of Earth's gravitational pull, then what goes up doesn't necessarily have to come down. right? I mean, we launched Voyager and it's still going. It's somewhere, but it went up, but it didn't come back down. So, like I said, like science, not my God. Maybe science has become a God for you, okay, because you can define it and you can make it what you want it to be, right? I mean, that's the great thing about science. Everybody can make it into their own God and make it fit into their box and make it comfortable with them. And the actual God, not so much. He doesn't function that way. Okay. So I think you had may have had some other ones. I just kind of close under the iceberg here on some of these. But I will try to put this all together and maybe I know you had like some more questions and I need to like find those and get those to you. But I'm trying. But here's the thing. And maybe we can wrap this up in some ways. God does not force you to believe him. He doesn't. But what you have to understand that that's a decision that you've made. And that's why the Bible is different from these other books that you want to bring in. So let me, yeah, I don't have time. So I might do this later. Genesis 3 gets into this, right? Because, you have to understand, and you don't have to. But man wants to be his own God. And you will try to explain God away because he just, the way he functions is not how you want to function. And that's part of our nature. We're rebellious. We're rebellious creatures. So this is a natural state. And this is just your natural rebellion. So let's kind of stop it with there. I know you've got another set that I need to answer, and I'll try to get to that. All right. God bless. Y'all have a great day.